Hey guys, sevenstop here. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to get a working manga setup on your computer to read on your computer and transfer manga to your phone and read it there as well. And I got a lot of the ideas and inspiration for this from KanjiEater. So I also brought KanjiEater on for this video, and we're going to have a brief discussion here, and then I'm going to get into the tutorial section explaining exactly how to set up all the tools you'll need. So thank you for coming on, KanjiEater.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we could work together on this. You know, I love manga.
So manga is one of the best sources to immerse with and learn Japanese from for a couple of reasons. But I wanted to talk about that before we get into the tutorial. Why should you use manga to learn Japanese? So for me personally, I went with a listening approach when I first was learning Japanese. I learned, and even now I learn most of my Japanese through listening or audio content. But if you're trying to go from listening approach to get into reading, manga is one of the best transition materials. That and using Japanese subtitles. But manga is basically, the content itself is really similar to audio-based content. It's basically just a written anime. And then it also has furigana, so you don't have to worry about kanji and difficult words as much. You can easily do lookups. It's really easy to learn new words because you can just read the furigana and then do lookups.
So the reason that I'm a really big fan of using manga to learn Japanese is because, first off, that was one of the things that got me into Japanese. I think some of the best stories out there start as manga and then go to other mediums. So beyond just that's where like the origin is, I also think it's really useful to start off with manga and then go to other mediums like anime or something like that. So I've been reading Arslan Senki for quite some time. It's about 16 volumes. It's a pretty difficult novel, but at the same time as me reading the novel, I'm also reading the manga, and I like to read the novel a little bit ahead of where I would be in the manga. That way, I can try to understand it myself, but then use the manga to also help visualize whatever was actually going on. So in that story in particular, there's a lot of characters, so having like a visual aid is also a nice thing. I find that typically manga kind of breaks up the stories into more bite-sized chunks, whereas in other mediums, it might be really long. You might have a really long run of a chapter or something. It might be easier to get lost in. Whereas a manga, you always have kind of those visual cues to keep pulling you back in. I also find that going from some of those like lower fidelity mediums, like starting with a novel and then going up to maybe like the visual novel of it, then maybe like the manga of it, then to the anime. If you kind of like go from that arc, it goes from something of like there's a lot less context clues in like the lower fidelity mediums to those higher ones. So if you're able to start in something that maybe is more difficult and then kind of work your way up, by the time you get to like where the anime is, where things are kind of moving faster, you already are familiar with like the content, the story. You won't have to pause as much and that sort of thing. Whereas while you were reading through the manga, you can pause and look up stuff at any time, get familiar with the vocab, and it acts as a base that kind of warms you up for some of the like deeper dives into stuff like the anime and that sort of thing.
I think it can be useful in the reverse as well. Like the manga could make the novel more comprehensible if you aren't really used to reading novels yet. But another thing is that so I went with a listening approach, but if you're going with a reading approach, which I think is pretty popular these days, a lot of people are learning mainly through reading. Manga is like the best way to get started, and visual novels as well. But I think manga is probably the best content to get started with, because the actual content is not as difficult as a book or something that has prose. It's just basically dialogue, which is much easier than prose, and so it's much easier to get started learning Japanese with manga.
I would agree with that. I'd say like there's manga for every difficulty level that you're at, but at the same time, it definitely is going to break things down into those smaller chunks, just like you said, because of how the dialogue is split up, but then also how novels and visual novels tend to use just longer sentences in general, right? Like if you go in ascending order, like manga has the shortest sentences, visual novels would be next, and then novels actually tend to have longer sentences than even visual novels. So I definitely found that for comprehensibility, that the shorter the sentence is, the easier it was for me to comprehend generally. And that's something that you just, build up tolerance for to handle longer and longer sentences. as you get better. But I would 100% agree with that.
And as you said, there's so many different kinds of manga, and there's a lot of really good manga. I mean, basically, the entire Japanese entertainment industry is built off of manga. Like dramas, anime, movies, everything is adapted from manga. And even books are adapted from manga sometimes. So there's like a ton of good manga, and there's just so many manga that are really good and have been adapted, and even ones that haven't been adapted. And there's, as you said, there's manga for every difficulty level. There's manga that have almost no dialogue. There's manga that have tons of dialogue. There's manga that are like, it's like reading a book. There's so much like dialogue and prose and stuff. Whereas other manga are really simple. So it's just a great way to learn at many different levels.
I also think that just the manga medium in general, like the way it's created, kind of places it in a place where it's easier to digest for people today. Like, because manga comes out a lot of times on like weekly or monthly basis, like the rate at which it's getting published, at any point, if it starts to suck, it's probably going to get canceled. Whereas something like a visual novel or a light novel, I mean, they might just keep going forever, which is why I've read a lot of visual novels at this point, a lot. And a lot of them, it's like, man, if they just had an editor that said, hey, it's time to wrap this chapter up, I think we'd be in a better spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with light novels, it's somewhat similar, but they come in big chunks, whereas manga comes in chapters. So it's much easier to just stop the manga. So before we get into the tutorial, I just wanted to give a recommended manga from both of us. So recently I read the manga孤高の人, The Climber in English, and it's just a great manga. It's kind of like the AJAT of manga. It's about this guy whose sole goal in life is to climb the most difficult face on the most difficult mountain in the world, the east wall of K2, which still hasn't been climbed today. But it's a really great manga. You'll learn lots of weird words about climbing, and it's a great story. It's really interesting, and it's complete. It's like a complete story. There's no continuation or anything like that. You can read it relatively quickly. It's really good. So I highly recommend that one.
So the best manga that I've read so far this year, like the whole thing that I've read, was probably Homunculus. One of the weirder ones that I've read involved a lot of like psychological thriller stuff that I haven't seen used anywhere else. Really did not expect where it was going from beginning to end. My wife was the one who recommended it to me, and throughout the time I was reading, I was definitely giving her the side eye for some of the weird things that she was making me read, but definitely highly recommend it. I would say it's probably at about an intermediate Japanese level, not too easy, not too hard. So I'd say definitely if you've been learning Japanese for a little bit, give that one a shot. It's you won't expect where it's going, so check it out.
So before we go into too much of the details, here's the basic idea. This flowchart describes how the setup works. You have hosts, providers, the actual server, which is using Suwayomi, and then the reader. So basically, you have a computer, and there's various sources that you can get from using different software, which I'll explain in the video. And you put those sources into Suwayomi, and then you can sync Suwayomi with your phone as long as your computer is on. You can sync it with your phone and then read and download the manga from your computer on your phone. And you can also read them on your computer using this setup.
So I've also been using a setup very similar to this. That's why sevenstop and I were talking about this. I have, for a few years now, been doing this setup of, get your manga from wherever you're getting it, put it onto Kamga is the thing that I use. That then acts as the server that other front ends can talk to. So whether I want to read it on a browser on my computer, whether I want to read it from Mihon on my phone, all of that just kind of comes together. I'd like to say it's seamless. There's always a little bit of hiccups with the open source stuff, but it's free, and I would say it's continually getting better. I've seen a lot of improvements just with the clients, kind of where they're going, some of the new tool sets with like AI upscaling, actually syncing things between your two devices, how that's gotten easier, as well as just being able to look up things really quickly with this new tool called Yomi Ninja. So there's a lot of things. It's constantly developing. It's gonna probably be hard to actually stay up to date with it all. But I mean, that's kind of the fun of being a Japanese learner.
So there's a ton of different tools. Like, for example, Kanji uses Kamga, but I went with the simplest setup that's easiest to set up so that you guys can have like a working setup relatively easily. But if you want to get ambitious, you can look into these other tools he's talking about, like Kamga and Yomi Ninja. I didn't even know about that one. But there's a ton of really useful tools in this sphere.
Feel free to reach out to me on my Discord. I'm happy to help out with any of this stuff because I really like my setup, but it is probably more complex than most people need. So I definitely recommend try out. Yeah.
I tried to set it up and I had some issues, which is why I decided to go with the simpler setup. Because if I was having issues, then probably everyone else is going to have more issues.
The most important thing is to start off with something simple enough that you'll actually use it, right? And then from there, if you find the other features and other areas worth the investment of time, like go for it. So as a manga otaku, I kind of went, head first into it, but you don't have to do that.
So one last thing to mention is my tutorial is for Windows since I use Windows, but the Docker, which is the piece that Suwayomi is working in, the most important part, it works on any platform basically. So as the steps from when you get Docker set up should be the same on any platform. It might be a little different up to that point, but this setup works on any platform. And for the phone piece, we're just going to be focusing on Android and Mihon. There may be other clients for iPhone, but I'm not too knowledgeable about it. But if someone does know about it, please put it in the comments below, like how you would connect Suwayomi to an iPhone. Alright, let's get right into it. I'm going to focus on Suwayomi, since that's the thing that you guys probably don't know about, and setting up Docker and all that stuff. So you can use Qbittorrent. I'm going to put a link in the description to Qbittorrent, JDownloader, and Calibre. Those are the other tools. And for Calibre, you're going to want to get this DeDRM plugin thing, which I'm going to put a guide on how to do that in the description. So I already have this stuff set up on my computer here, and so I'm not going to go through how to do those, but it's pretty straightforward. I'll put links in the description. Qbittorrent and JDownloader, you just install the program, and for Calibre, you just install it and then you follow the guide. You just drag some zip files in and it should work perfectly fine. Probably a lot of you guys already have Qbittorrent and JDownloader and Calibre already on your computer if you're in the immersion learning community. If you're not, it's pretty simple to get those. So for JDownloader, you just install the program and stuff, but you're going to be downloading from these direct download sites, which often require some kind of CAPTCHA. And in order to do that, you're going to need to have a browser extension. So I'll put the link in the description here, but you just need to go to this site and install the browser extension. They support Chrome, Firefox, and Opera. And so when you use the direct download, then it's going to bring up a page and you solve a CAPTCHA in order to download it. For Opera, I can just go to the Chrome page and click Add to Opera because it uses Chrome extensions. And there it is. So we're going to be using this program Docker to set up Suwayomi, and before you install Docker, you're going to need this thing called Windows Subsystem for Linux. So basically, I already have it, so I can't really show you the process, and I couldn't figure out how to remove it. It's more complicated than I care to figure out. So in order to install WSL Windows Subsystem for Linux, you're just going to need to go to the command prompt, open it as administrator, and then run a command to install it. So you can choose different distros of Linux, but just use this command if you don't know what you're doing. wsl-install-d and then Ubuntu, which is the version of Linux that I'm using. So I already have this on my computer, so I don't need to worry about this. But basically, you run this command and then follow the prompts and set it up, put in a username and a password. It's really simple. And I'll put a link in the description to a site that shows you how to do this. But I already have it set up. So after you have that set up, just go to the Docker installer. I'll put a link to where to download it in the description. Download Docker. Then wait for it to complete the install. So you want to leave this checked. It says use WSL2 instead of Hyper-V. You leave that checked. Okay, so it looks like it completed. Now you're just going to need to restart your computer. So the reboot completed, and we're just going to need to open up Docker. Accept the terms, no one reads those anyway. and then just create an account, or you can skip. So I'm just going to skip that because I don't care. Skip, and it'll start up the Docker stuff. So now that you have Docker open, you're going to want to copy some text that I have in the description into a text file and name it .yaml. So here is the text in a different YAML file that I have already. And so I'm just going to want to copy this. I'll put it in the description. So you can customize some of the content here, which I'll show you how to do. But you're going to want to make a folder, which is where your manga stuff is going to be saved. Name it whatever you want. And then make a text document in here. Name it Compose. Open it up. Then copy this over, text file. And you can change it as you want. Like you would say you want to change the port. So this, if you don't know what this is, you don't have to worry about it too much. You can just leave it as default. But basically you can change the port that your server is running off of, because it's basically going to be a server that you can connect to from your phone. So you can change this if you want. And that doesn't really have a huge effect, but you're going to have to port forward this if you want to access it outside your network, and you'll need to know the port. And then you can also add authentication stuff like username, password, this kind of stuff, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Right now these lines are commented out, so it won't affect anything. But if you want, you can just delete this and add something like some kind of authentication. So I'm just going to leave mine without that, but you can do that. And then you can also change the time zone and stuff like that, but I'm not going to worry about any of that right now. Let's just get it working. So now that you have it saved, this text file, close it, right click, rename it, and change the extension to YAML. And then in order to set this up, go to command prompt, run as administrator, and then type the following commands. So copy the directory that you just created that folder in, type cd, and paste the directory. Enter. And then you want to type docker dash compose up, just like this. Paste it, and then it will create a container for you. Then if it asks for permission, you just want to give it permission. So then you can close that and it'll shut down the container. To start and shut off the container, there'll be a button here so you can stop and start the container. So the file will basically create a container in Docker like this. So I had some issues. I had to stop and redo it again. You might have to redo it. Like it might break and it's kind of glitchy and buggy. So if you ever need to like try again, you can just click this delete button, delete the container, then run the script again, different settings or something like that. But it should work if you use the default settings. So I just use the default settings. It doesn't have any authentication or anything like that. And as you can see, it's appeared here. So if you go back to the folder you created, you can see there's a data folder, and there's going to be a downloads and a local folder. These are the two folders that are important. So in order to actually open the UI, so you can see what's going on, you go here, and then it's the second one. There's two links. There's 4 links actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's this 4th link. You just click this, and it'll open in your browser, which is on a second monitor for me. So just drag that over. So this is what you'll see: your library and downloads, settings, things like that. So basically, if you've used Tachiyomi or Mihon, this is basically that, but on your computer. So to actually populate this with manga, you're going to want to add the Mihon extensions. There's this thing called Keiyoushi, and you can add that and populate this with manga, and it does have Japanese manga. That's the whole point. So the Keiyoushi extensions are connected to like reader sites. There's various manga reading sites, and that's how it gets the manga. So it basically populates that in here. I'm not going to go too far into it, but to add a repo, which is what you need to do to get the Keiyoushi, sources and stuff. Go to Browse, and then right here, mine is like in a combination of English and Japanese for some reason. Click here and click this button, and then you add your repo in here. So I'll put links in the descriptions to this site where you can get the repo to paste in here, which will allow you to populate your program with MANGA. Let's say we managed to obtain some MANGA sources via unknown means, and you have a bunch of MANGA sources here, which are in like all languages or in English. Like you probably have this issue where all it shows is English. So this is going to be the same here and on Mihon. It's basically the same software. You go up to the filter here, and then you just select the language you want. So we want Japanese because we're learning Japanese. So let's say you managed to find a manga and download it through some unknown method through Suwayomi. When you download files through Suwayomi, they'll go to, in the data folder, to this downloads folder right here. So I downloaded a chapter of Chainsaw Man. So let's say you obtained a manga from one of these other means like Qbittorrent, JDownloader, or you bought it on Amazon and you DeDRM'd it on Calibre and you have a file. You have a bunch of images. That's what you want. You want a bunch of images, and you want to put that in Suwayomi. And you're going to see, well, you can read it in Suwayomi, and you're also going to see how we can sync our manga in Suwayomi with our phone. So you're going to want to go to this folder local and then create a folder for the manga. So I'm going to say I want Komi-san. You can name it anything. This is the manga I have that I'm going to demonstrate with. So I have a volume of Komi-san that I downloaded through some means. And in Suwayomi, it's arranged by chapters, but I'm just going to be going by manga and volume because usually when you download these, it's going to be in the volume format. From almost any of these sources that I'm talking about, when you download it, it'll be in the volume format. So it'll call it chapter in Suwayomi, but it'll just be a volume. That's just easiest to do, and I'm sure you could make it, work nicer and be a little nicer, but I prefer to keep things simple even if it's not precise. So here's the manga, which I have in a folder, which I obtained from some unknown means, and this is volume 12. So I just drag this into the folder I created in local, and then when you go to Suwayomi, go to your local source, and it should be there. So I can open this up, just click here, and it'll say chapter, but it really means volume because we put a volume in. You could put a chapter in, like it would usually be by volumes and then chapters inside, but when you download this stuff, it's always in volume. So just go to volume, and then here you go. You can read manga on your... However, the real best part of this, because most of you are probably wanting to read manga on your phone, the best part of this is that you can sync it with your phone. So here's how to do that. So as you can see, I'm on my phone, and you need to have Mihon. So Mihon, you can just sideload it as an APK. I already have it here, and I don't want to delete it because I'll lose all of my manga and stuff that I have in here. So I'm just going to not show you how to install it, but it's pretty simple. You just load the APK, and I'll put links in the descriptions on how to do that. So open your Mihon app once you have it installed. Go to Other, go to Settings, go to Browse, and then add your repository here. So we're going to need to add a repository for the Suwayomi extension. So just add that, go back. I'll put the link in the description. You just copy that link and add it in there. So after you install it, just restart Mihon, go to Browse, and then you should have Suwayomi here. So as you can see, it's not showing anything right now. So how do you sync this with your computer? So now there's going to be two ways to connect Suwayomi on your phone to your computer. So the best way requires port forwarding. So basically, in order to connect to it through your public IP address, which means you don't have to be connected to your network, you can be anywhere, then you're going to need to port forward. So this is the best way. And the backup way, I'll show you. I'm going to show you how to do the port forwarding way because that's the better way. But if you have some issue with port forwarding, you can't do it on your router, you don't have control over your router, you can connect locally. So what you're going to want to do is go back to your computer, type cmd, get the command prompt open, ipconfig. Probably a lot of you have seen this before. So you go to ipconfig, it'll tell you some information about your router. So if you want to connect locally, you're going to use this IP address that it has here, This is my local IP address. Then go to settings on Suwayomi, type in http:// then type in this address. So for me it's 192.168.0.11 : and then the port. So 4567 is the default port, whatever you set it to. Then restart Mihon. Open it up. Go to browse, go to Suwayomi. So then you open it up and there's my manga. In order to have the manga that you have as a local source that I showed you before right here appear on your phone, you need to click here. Then you need to add it to your library. So just click this heart button and then it'll appear in your library, which is right here, and that's what you can see on your phone. So as you can see, it's here, but this only works when you're connected to your Wi-Fi. And again, this only works when your computer is on. So even if you're not on your Wi-Fi, if your computer isn't on, you won't be able to sync it. So when your computer isn't on and you need to sync your manga, you'll have to download it onto your phone. So like you can download directly here by clicking this button. This is a big file, so I'm not going to download it. So for the public IP address part, so you can connect anywhere, you're going to go to your computer again. You're going to look up, what is my IP address? What is my IP? Go to any site that shows your IP. And then you're going to want this IPv4 address. So then, in order for this to work, because it won't work unless you port forward, you need to go back to your IP config page that you opened, and then find this line that says default gateway. And then there'll be this is called an IPv6 address, but you want this one that's simpler, IPv4 address. So take this one, copy it, put it in your browser, and this will open the config page for your modem. So there's going to be a default username and password on a modem. It'll be written on your modem, or you can look up online like the default for your modem's model. So I have a custom password set. And every modem is different, so I'm going to show you how to do this on my modem, but it's going to be different on yours, and you're going to have to figure it out. So this is called port forwarding. You can always look it up, how to port forward on X model of router, modem, whatever the hell it's called. So go to virtual server / port forwarding for me, and then I have a couple of port forwards here, but then so I already have one set up. So this is the port forward right here for Suwayomi on my computer. So you're going to click add, and this is you're probably going to need similar information on yours. So you're going to want to have a description, so anything, doesn't matter. And then you're going to need inbound port and outbound port. So for this, you just want to put the port you need, 4567, which is the default, or whatever you set it to, and it might error out. Sometimes they require a range, so that's why mine is 4568 on my port forward list. And then for the format, you can do TCP, UDP, both. I'll just do both. It doesn't matter. Well, you should do TCP or both. But then for the private IP address, you're going to want to go back to your IP config page, and then that address that you used before, or that I showed before, right here, IPv4 address, you just want to copy this and use that as your private IP address. And you add this. I already have this port range in here, so it's not going to work. But if you don't have it, if you don't have anything in here on this port, you should be able to just put 4567-4567 or something like that, and then add it. Then once that port forwarding rule is added, you go back to your phone, you go to the settings on your phone, go to the server URL address, and then just replace the private IP address you put in before with your public IP address that's listed here. So I'll just put that in. Then add it, restart Suwayomi. Or not Suwayomi, Mihon. Restart Mihon. Go to browse Suwayomi, and my stuff is still here. So that's how you do it. If you set up some credentials in the Compose, you can add them here, login, password. But now you have your manga visible on your phone. you can download it on your phone. But the main use is that you want to be able to download local manga, sync it with your phone, view it from your phone. So as long as your computer's on, you can read this even without downloading it, just like any manga reader. But if your computer's off, you'll need to download it to view it. Alright, so that wraps it up for everything. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for coming here today, Kanji. I hope this will be of use to everyone and have some fun reading manga.
So yeah, I really appreciate being able to hang out with you on this 7-Stop and talk to you a little bit about our manga setups and why we think manga is a great way to learn Japanese. If you want to find me, I'm KanjiEater everywhere. Should have a new Deep Weeb podcast coming out soon where I interview people that are learning Japanese as well as just ramble about my Anki settings. In addition to that, if you are interested in starting out with some manga, I have been running a manga club over in my Discord server. Definitely check that out. There's all levels and ranges of people there. You probably won't catch up with the guy who's at the top of that leaderboard. I certainly haven't, but it's definitely a fun time to get to share in the otaku community.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a Discord server as well. It's a little bit freaky, but if you're interested, then I'll put it in the description. Thanks guys for watching. Bye.